Saturday marks the official opening of the new Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture. We visited the museum with a man who spent 15 years working on its establishment, Georgia Congressman John Lewis. Congressman, we're sitting here at a lunch counter. What does that mean to you?
Sitting here, I tell you, mean everything to me. My first nonviolent protest was in 1960 in downtown Nashville, sitting down at a lunch counter on a stool in the local Woolworth store. So this all take me back. I grew up sitting down. I wouldn't be the person that I am today if it hadn't been for taking the seat.
What does it mean to be here inside this building?
It just means everything. To walk in here, to be here, to see this magnificent museum. It's going to continue to take me back. Just walking through here, almost cried. I don't want you to make me cry.
You also spoke at the other end of this mall on the March on Washington. Would you ever have imagined that there would be this kind of a monument?
I never thought, I never dreamed that one day there would be a monument, there would be a museum telling the story and the history of African American from the days of slavery to the present.
What is that story you want people to understand when they come here?
This story is an American story. It tells of our history, our struggle. Through segregation, racial discrimination, but much earlier, the whole system of slavery, the denial of basic constitutional right, the right to vote, the right to get an education. That people suffered, they struggled. People were beaten, arrested, and jailed. People died, but they never gave up. They never gave in. They never became bitter or hostile. They kept the faith and they kept dreaming.
When you spoke on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, you said, "Wake up, America. We cannot stop and we will not and cannot be patient." A real sense of urgency. Where are things now in terms of urgency in the fight for social justice?
Well, we have come a distance. We've made a lot of progress. And when people tell me nothing has changed, I feel like saying, come and walk in my shoes. I will show you change. We're one people, and we all must be involved in the struggle that we were involved in during the 50s and the 60s. White people and black people suffered together. They died together to bring about change, to bring down those signs that said white waiting, colored waiting, white men, white women, colored women. Those signs are gone and they will not return. The only places we will see those signs today will be in a book or in a museum like this museum.
Speaking of getting inside of John Lewis's shoes, there's a picture of you here on the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Tell me about what happened then.
Well, on March 7, 1965, a group of us, about 600 of us, wanted to walk from Selma, Alabama to Montgomery to dramatize to the nation and to the world that people of color wanted to register to vote. We were walking in an orderly, peaceful, nonviolent fashion. We came to the highest point on the Edmund Pettus Bridge, crossing the Alabama River. Down below we saw a sea of blue, Alabama state troopers. And a man spoke up, the major, said this was an unlawful march, it would not be allowed to continue. And a young man from Dr. King's organization walking beside said, "Major, give us a moment to kneel and pray." And the major said, "Troopers, advance." I said, "Major, may I have a word?" And he said, "There will be no word." And they came toward us, beating us with nightsticks, trampling us with horses, releasing the tear gas. I was hit in the head by a state trooper with a nightstick. Had a concussion at the bridge. I thought I was going to die. I thought I saw death. 2 weeks later, we walked from Selma to Montgomery. And President Johnson made one of the most moving speeches any American president made in modern time on the whole question of voting rights or civil rights. And at the end of that speech, he said, "And we shall overcome."
You recently wrote a piece in the Huffington Post about that march from Selma to Montgomery and used it as a way to talk about where we are today. Tell me a little bit about that.
The march of 50 years ago changed America forever. There were hundreds and thousands of people coming from all across America. Priests, rabbis, nuns, ministers, lawyers, doctors, teachers, white, all coming together was like a holy walk. And that led to the passage of the Voting Rights Act. There's still a need for people to use nonviolent protest. We should never, ever give up on the right to protest of what is right.
You mentioned nonviolence. Martin Luther King and the Montgomery Story, that comic book that inspired you when you were growing up. In that comic book, it talks about loving thy neighbor. It's a strong part of the nonviolent message that even the people who are hitting you and beating you deserve your love. Where is that message now?
That message is still embedded in many of us. I think we have to teach all of our children, and those of us not so young, that the way of love is a better way. Just respect the dignity and the worth of every human being. We need to continue to get it out there. And if we get it right, I really believe if we get it right in America, maybe it can serve as a model for the rest of the world.
Is that message of loving thy neighbor, is it being lost a little bit?
I think there's some forces in America trying to take us back to another period, but we must not let that happen.
You see that in the presidential campaign this year?
I see it very much so, that there are forces that want to divide us, and we must not be divided. We've come so far, we made so much progress by working and building together. Too many of my friends, too many of my colleagues, young people that I knew in '63 and '64, white and African American, died together. And we must not let their death be in vain.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.